What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Gizmo for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. Much respect to him for showing love to Too Raw for TV. And look, I know these videos like this aren't going to get a lot of views, but I do them because they're fun. And I want to just to do something different, you know what I'm saying? Not to always do videos talking about the same type of stuff, right? So I want to talk about a movie, a fun little movie that came out back in 2003. It was the first movie that Chris Rock actually directed. It's called Head of State. And when the movie came out at the time, um, Chris Rock was never known and still has never been known for his movie career. I mean, he's had some movies that have come out that I think are, I guess I would say they've become cult classics, especially in our community, like CB4. I would throw Pootie Tang in there. A lot of movies he did, most of them were not commercially successful. Matter of fact, none of them that I can think of off the top of my head that he starred in were uh, financial successes, like when he was first billed. That's what I'm trying to say. But Head of State interests me because I love politics. In particular, being a sports fan, I love elections because they're kind of like elections. There's a competition between two, sometimes more than two opponents. As far as main opponents are concerned, um, the primaries are kind of like the first round of the NBA playoffs, and election day is maybe the Super Bowl, right? As far as presidential elections. So I've always been interested. And I've also been, I'm a fan of history. So the movie Head of State is about a very, very unlikely presidential candidate in a character named Mays Gilliam. Now, if I remember correctly, Mays Gilliam, I did a little bit of research before I did this video, just from blowing up on some things. Mays Gilliam, played by Chris Rock, is an alderman from Washington, D.C. And I believe at the time that this big break happened for him, he was in a a down patch in his life. His selfish, haughty girlfriend, played by Robin Gibbons, was dumping him because, his career was really going nowhere. He really wasn't doing much. I mean, he was a guy that wanted to help his community, but he financially was not a very wealthy man at all. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't really matter if your heart is big and you're doing things and you're trying to help your community. Financially, and status wise, he just was kind of stuck in a rut. And anyway, he didn't meet this girl, and she's not pictured here. I'm trying to remember her name. I think the actress name is Tamala. I think it's Tamala Brown or Tamala Reed. Might be Tamala Reed. But anyway, she played in Booty Call. She was a popular actress in the late 90s, early 2000s. Tamala Jones is her name. Excuse me. It's Tamala Jones. Very popular black actress I shouldn't even say black actress, but popular actress in predominantly black movies in the 90s and 2000s. And she plays a love interest. I think she works at let's just say a local restaurant or something like that. Or it might have been a gas station with a store attached, those things. But anyway, the big break for Mays comes when the Democratic presidential candidates, the presidential and vice presidential candidates, are killed in a plane crash. And I guess the top Democratic figure, who himself has his eye on the White House 4 years down the line, he handpicks Mays Gilliam. to be the replacement nominee, right? Now that seems like a great thing for Mays, Gilliam, right? But in reality, the top Democratic dog on Capitol Hill, played by the late James Redbourne, I think his name is, he purposely picked Mays Gilliam because he didn't think that Mays had a he didn't think he had a snowball hell of a chance of getting elected. He's a black man who is not a jig and definitely wants to empower his people and those who are poor in this country, right? And that's a no-no for those who are part of the establishment. They want you to look after them first, the wealthy. You know, that's just how it is in this country, right? And at first, Mays is sticking to the boring script. He's sticking to the boring script of, you know, the same standard blah blah stump speech, and his crowds were boring, and he was losing by like 30 points. He was going to suffer a historic loss to the vice president of the United States, who was the Republican nominee for president. But keep in mind, this movie came out in 2003, right? So it was around that atmosphere. This was pre-Obama, okay? So the notion of a black president just seemed a dream. It's just something that wasn't really ever going to happen. So what happened was Mays caught wind of the fact that he was being sabotaged. He was basically, what's the word I'm looking for? He was a sacrifice. He was a sacrificial lamb to take the hit for that election, only for the character played by James Redbourne to be the nominee and for himself the next election, right? So Mays cleans up his campaign. He fires Lynn Whitfield, who you see right here, who initially was really resistant to Mays. She saw him as, let's just be honest, she saw him as unpolished, a nigger, and all that type shit, right? So he fired her ass, although she did come back. She came back. She made her mea culpa. She said, I'm sorry, you know what, you're right. Let's do this thing the right way. And he changes his whole campaign stump speech. He talked about real issues that real Americans wanted to hear about. And he started making gains. He went from being like 30 points down the polls to 20 to 18 to 11, then single digits. So the Republican the vice president, the reigning vice president, who's Republican, not presidential nominee, who really hadn't been doing much of nothing, he starts panicking a little bit. And on the Democratic side, the guy who has his eye on the White House 4 years from that point, he's getting nervous because, wait a minute, Mays ain't supposed to get this fucking office. He's just supposed to run and be the sacrificial lamb for this year so I could be the nominee 4 years from now and win it in a year that's more favorable for me. So they both conspired to fuck over Mays Gilliam. Mays also, because he doesn't trust any goddamn body, nominates his brother, whose name I forget, but his brother's played by Bernie Mac, to be the vice president on the ticket, right? So then they have this debate. The debate between Mays Gilliam and I forget the vice president's name. I forget it. But I should have looked it up before I did this video. I'm so sorry. I should have looked it up. But all I know is that the vice president, he was the cousin of actress Sharon Stone, right? I don't know why that joke was so prevalent in the movie, but his cousin was Sharon Stone, right? And I remember he had this very memorable phrase he would say at the end of every speech: God bless America and no place else. And he always said that, which Mays destroyed when he did his rebuttal of the debate. Like, why just God bless America? what makes America? We're a great land, but no, God bless other nations. He in his rebuttal in that debate, he destroyed the vice president, and basically on election day, the polls were a dead heat. Now, my biggest beef with this movie is the fact that I thought electorally was a little bit off. Like the fact that they said that the race came down to California, right? Which even in 2000 and 2004, in an election that was that close, California should still have been won by a Democrat by like at least 10 to 15 points, even then. You know what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't have been down to the wire like it's the 80s in California. California, I've said this before, California has not really been competitive in a presidential election since 1988. So that kind of bothered me from a historical perspective, but whatever. Mays Gilliam wins the election, right? So it's a great ending, right? I think he eventually marries or at least dates the Tamala Jones character in the movie. And he becomes president of the United States. His brother is the vice president, and it's a nice movie, right? But the movie gained a lot more significance after the election of Barack Obama. And I think that after the election of Barack Obama, even though the movie when it first came out it got mixed reviews. It was not a huge box office hit. It only made I think it made less than $40 million worldwide. Even by $2003, that wasn't a lot of money. But I think after the election of Barack Obama, the movie aged well. I put it like that. It aged well. And I think it's become one of the cult classics for Chris Rock. And I love the cast. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull up the cast right now and for this movie. Matter of fact, I can't do it right now because I'm recording. But, it has a great cast. As I said, Chris Rock is in the movie. Lynn Whitfield is in the movie. Tamala Jones, or Tamala Jones. James Redbourne, Bernie Mac. Who else is in the movie? Which calls it a supporting role in this movie. Tracy Morgan plays an idiot. You know how Tracy is. Tracy, you know, Tracy's just a funny character, man. When are we gonna look at Martin? I want to see Martin. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. But anyway, check that movie out, man. If y'all get a chance, tell me what you guys think.